I don't think any of us are born as naturally brilliant business leaders. And I think, in fact, many of us find it incredibly challenging. The idea of hiring a team, of motivating that team, or inspiring them to deliver our vision so our company makes the impact in the world that we dream it to make, that is something that is incredibly daunting and something that I find challenging myself, and I've spent a long time trying to be better at. But today I had an incredible conversation with a guy called Scott Burgmeyer, who's the founder of BecomeMore. His organization is all about helping business owners to do just that, be better leaders, to become more themselves, to be more self-aware, to actually put the time and effort into creating more emotional intelligence, about building a better mental model, about having the right attitude and the right tools at hand to be able to create a culture in your business that improves the relationships within the business and the productivity and ultimately the success of that business. Scott was incredibly generous and open with his knowledge and experience, and I learned a bunch of practical new stuff that I'm going to go away and implement in my business to make me a better business leader. I hope you do too.
So the question is this: how do entrepreneurs like us, who don't have an endless supply of cash, how do we leverage the best apps, virtual assistants, automation tools, and systems to scale our businesses, increase our profits, and have more time to do what we love to do each day? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answer. My name's Dr. Steve Day, and this is Systemize Your Success.
Hello and welcome to Systemize Your Success. I'm Dr. Steve Day, and today I'm joined by Scott Burgmeyer. Scott is the co-founder and CEO of BecomeMore Group, and he specializes in helping leaders to level up and achieve goals they're targeting for. I'm especially excited about speaking today because he also has a lot of insights on how us small business owners can set ourselves up for success. So when we do grow, then we are in the right place to do so and be massively successful. So it's an absolute pleasure for me to invite you here today, Scott, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Oh, thanks, Steve. I am excited to be here and share and chat, and I
Good stuff.
hope someone can take one nugget. As long as someone takes one nugget, it's a win.
Yeah, well, no doubt there'll be many more than that. Cool. Let's kick off. So I know you've got many decades of experience and in helping companies transform and working with big corporations as well. And I'm interested to know that, like, how does a lot of what you've learned over the years of working in those companies, and actually we're going to rewind a little bit and explain what it is you do, and why you now do what you do, and then we'll come back to the question I was going to ask, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's great. I would describe Become More Group as most would say, "Oh, you're a consulting firm." Yes, we are a consulting firm, and we look at it as we're going to partner with our client and organization. It could be a team, an organization, a person, and to identify where do they want to go and why do they want to go there, and then what solution or solutions do we need to put in place to get there. So we are typically really looking at, they want to go to that point, which could be I want to grow revenue, I want to make my clients happier, I want to lead better, or anything in between. And it's looking at what things do we need to do to put in place. And it really is a balance of the technical skills that people need, which could be anything from computer skills to more process improvement or uh, systems functions, and the people side of the business, because those have a tremendous overlap, and if you do one without the other, we have found you just don't get as far.
Okay. And so say if you were working with, say myself, if I came to you as a potential client, what kind of things would you be asking me, like, in order for you to help guide me on where I want to go? If I'm actually not, maybe I'm not 100% sure on where I particularly want to go. And I think that's for many, I can only speak for myself as a micro small business owner, but sometimes there's all this strategy stuff that's done about giving yourself targets, and most of them are just made up arbitrary numbers or goals that we just sort of bag of a fag packet type ideas. But actually,
Yeah.
how do you go deeper into it and think about what is it that how would I know what actually I should be working towards? The first step towards creating goals that actually are meaningful and things that will last the test of time.
I love this question because I would tell you the number goals are one of the last things we would focus on. Typically, we're going to ask questions around, all right, where have you been? What, like, give us some history. And where do you want to go? Not number wise, but what does it feel like? What are you seeing? What kind of customers are you working with or not working with? Because we're trying to understand what are the qualitative kind of feelings, what are people in your organization doing, and then compare that to what's happening today. So a typical one is, oh, we want our people to be solution focused or, to bring forth ideas and have thought through how to do that. That may be something a leader says. Okay, great. What are they doing today? And working to understand why are they doing what they're doing today? That is holding them back from doing what you want them to do. Once we have that defined, which so that could be 10 different statements or, kind of behavioral traits, could be 100, like it just depends. Then we can start to say, all right, where are the places that you as a leader are preventing that from happening? Because typically there is a leadership component. Typically there's a development component. The reality is our experience says, you know what? 97% of people are really doing the best job they can. They've either never seen it done the way you think you would like it done, or they've never been trained that way, or it's not being reinforced to do it that way. And so now we have to start to talk about what process infrastructure, what leadership infrastructure do we need to put in place to get to that point. Once we know that, then we can start to talk about, all right, what are some of the, you know, quantitative goals around that? And it is interesting. We see a lot where people want a silver bullet. Like, if I do this, it is going to give me that. And the reality is, no, it is likely going to be four or five or 25 little things that get you there. I might be able to do one thing and take a pretty good step forward. That's likely not going to sustain that. That's going to give me one good step forward. And then I have to build the habits and the systems and the processes and reinforce them to sustain that and go those incremental steps.
Oh, brilliant. That really resonates with me because one of the things you mentioned at the beginning of your answer there was talking about what does it feel like? What does it feel like when you get there? And one of the things that over the past 18 months, more than the 8 years I've run this business, but especially the past 18 months, is I've realized that what I help people do and what I want to help people do is to create the the feelings inside themselves today that they're proud of, to feel like they're successful, to feel like they are on a path, to feel like freedom to do what they want. That's like the win for me, which I've only realized that I've helped people to do in after doing it for nearly a decade now, rather than thinking they need this thing, they need this step, this system, this solution, this thing. Is like all of those pieces, exactly what I said. It's all those miniature pieces you put together that create this the end result. And the end result
Yes.
isn't a number. It isn't a thing. Because like if that's all you're chasing, then you just that you'll never get there because your goalpost is always going to move. The further along you get towards that number, the further away it's going to get. And so I think I really, yeah, I think we have a lot in common in the way that we approach stuff, which I really like because um, I've one of the biggest realizations I've had is that is the key to success. And this is all about systemizing your success. The podcast is like the key to success, actually redefining what success means to you in terms of things that are tangible and real, and not arbitrary and ever moving. So love it.
And there's an element here of also why. So you want this or you want this feeling, and why do you want that? So is it because a lot of times what we see is people, and it's really subtle in my experience. are you running towards something or are you running away from something? So whether you're saying I want to change jobs, okay, are you running away from something in your current job or are you running towards something you're passionate about? Well, I want to grow the business. Okay, to do what and why? Are you running towards something or are you chasing like are you like, well, I just don't want that anymore? Well, if I don't want that anymore, but I haven't defined what I do want, then I'm just running away from something and you will not be satisfied. You'll feel like, oh, I'm just not there and it's not working. And it's like, well, no. Let's define what does it feel like? What does good look like?
Yeah. I love the other example you gave as well, which is probably one of the most common things I hear people complain, if that's the right word, or wish to improve in their staff when we're working, especially in small businesses where you're not able to afford to hire in top executives who've got decades of experience who are literally coming and hitting the ground running, for a cliche expression. Often these people you're nurturing and training up yourselves, and it's us as leaders that are like the biggest factor in is that a successful role, not the person who's in the role. And so this idea of one of my coaches many years ago said I can't remember the phrase, but basically solutions before questions. That wasn't quite the way he said it. And that every time that someone came to him with a question, they had to have said, "This is what I think the answer is. This is what I think the solution is." That was the only way they were allowed to ask a question, was to present the solution, like their solution first. And I've tried hard to work with that idea, but it is hard. And I think that, like, how do you help in that specific example? I know it's getting very specific, but I think it's a really interesting one because I'm sure it's evident in any size organization. Is how do you get that culture? I think is a good word in this case of like solutions before problems, basically.
Hmm.
In that,
Hmm.
and I know there's a great book by Seth Godin, Poke the Box, which I actually get all my staff to read when they start, because it's this idea of failing forward, if you like, and like actually having a go, and it's okay to fail, and the coming up with the ideas is the most important part of your role in any position. And what else can you do to actually cultivate that culture of actually putting yourself out there and making decisions which may ultimately fail?
Yeah, and I think it's an age-old challenge because we don't have time and it's easier to just give the answer than to ask questions. And we would tell you, the strongest leaders are asking really good questions. And and so whether you say I want them to bring solution, like whatever that looks like for your organization, um, I think there's this a piece of are they identifying the right problem? Because sometimes they're trying to solve a problem, but they're not looking the next layer down to say what's the real problem. They're solving a symptom. And it is right the joke about when the guy goes in and moving his arm and it says, hey doc, it hurts when I do this, and the doctor says, oh, just stop doing that, it will stop hurting, right? Well, wait a minute, like, okay, yes, that is a solution that solves the problem, but that's not really the root. And so it's the piece of, as a leader, am I asking good questions? Now, before I go there, I also have to set the expectation. I have to set the expectation that here in our organization, we want people to identify the right problem and to do some research on what are possible solutions and be thoughtful about this. We think this is the best solution. And why we want that is because we actually we hire people because like they have brains and we want them to use their brains. It is kind of amazing. That sounds weird saying it out loud. Like I'm going to set the expectation. I'm going to explain why. You know what? Our experience is about half of the leaders don't take the time to do that. And then they're like, well, they don't do it. And I don't understand why they do it because you never told them, which is, I know is like, well, why do I have to tell them? Like, that's one of my favorite. That's just the gig. You as a leader, you have that. Now, once I've told them and explained the why, now I can start to ask questions and open-ended questions. How did you decide that was the right problem? Talk to me about what other solutions did you consider before you brought this one forward? What made you say those two were not the right solution and this one was the right solution? Now I'm starting to understand, how did they come to the conclusion that, option C is the best solution? I was talking with someone yesterday in a coaching session, and they're implementing a new phone system, and they're like, well, we want to save money, and they're 150 employees. Okay, so they want to save money, and they're saying, for this group of people, we're going to have phone system A because it has all these extra features. But we want to save some money, and for this other group of people, we're going to have phone system B because it saves us money. And then we start talking about, well, the administrative burden of managing two different phone systems. And what if someone changes jobs and they need this other phone system? Well, now you either have to port a number or you have to give them a new number. So now they have to learn a new phone number. And people who contacted them will call the old number. And when we did the math, they were saving like $8,000 a year. And so my question to them was, is there $8,000 worth of burden to your organization? Like $8,000 is not that much money. Is it worth it? And he had never considered that. Now that doesn't mean he's foolish. It just means no one's ever asked him to think like that before. And so it is like, how do you walk through those scenarios with people to have them see options and alternatives, and really allow the lovely gray matter in their head to function.
Definitely. I think the advent of we talked about this just before we came on mic as well. We talked about ChatGPT and Gemini and things, and I think one of the things I've noticed by way of me trying to encourage my staff to leverage AI is sometimes now they've almost regressed in their problem solving abilities, because it's like, oh, we'll just copy and paste it into AI and see what that says, and that'll be the answer. And it's like, if I wanted that to be done, I would build a robot. I don't need a human to copy and paste into ChatGPT to then post that answer. It's like,
Yes.
so I employed you because you're a human, and need you to be a human regardless of what tools you're using. And so it's almost like I felt like, yeah, literally feel like I've gone 2 steps back. Hopefully, to go 3 steps forward at some point. But it's like having years of trying to train people to think and actually question and then come up with solutions to then now go, we'll just give that answer. So it's been really interesting to see that almost come to light again in recent times because of new technology that have come out, and it's making people not think like humans again.
Yeah. And it is an element, as you talk about this piece of thinking. A lot of us are taught to get the right answer, and getting the right answer is winning. Wherein the reality in business is, you know what? There might be more than one right answer. How do I pick the best answer based on the scenario and the outcomes I want to achieve, which might actually not be the quote right answer. It may be the closest answer. And that can be hard for people to say, okay, wait a minute, I've been taught for many, many years to get the quote right answer. And now you're telling me, the right answer is to do this, but we can't afford to do that. I might not be able to afford, you mentioned earlier, the right answer might be to hire this really high paid person. I can't afford that. If I did that, like, I would probably put myself out of business. So now I have to develop someone, which is still a right answer. It just means it's the best answer today. And it really, I'm chuckling about your comment because uh, hopefully I can do a shameless plug. We're actually publishing a book in April, and the title of the book is Think: The Road Less Traveled. And we, in our research, we have found 8 personas of why people don't think. They just act or go through the motions or do whatever they do. And it is part of it is, did I just get the answer? I'm going to plug it into ChatGPT or Gemini. Oh, I assume I know the right answer, so I'm just going to run 100 miles an hour. And then I'm going to say, oh crap, that wasn't the right answer. And I wasted all of that effort and time and energy. And so it's the research around it is fascinating when you start to look at people are many times are just in act and react mode, and they're not always thinking through and providing context around what they're doing and why they're doing it. And so it's just fascinating to me.
Yeah. I think I spent a long time, sorry, I spent a lot of time asking my staff why they made the decisions they made. And I think it's one of the most insightful things I ever started to do. And one of the things that always amazes me is, yeah, there's two things which often come up. It's either a cost issue or a time issue. And in their minds, why they made the decision was something to do with one of those two things, regardless of if it was the right decision or not. Sometimes it's all like, yeah, but I didn't really have time to think about it. It's like, yeah, but did that mean that you came up with a viable solution? Or like would have been maybe if you were worried about the time, saying, I need more time to get to a position where I'm confident or whatever. Like there's a lot of ways it could do about it. It's like, oh no, I didn't think of that. But whatever the context is it's often sometimes they put themselves into a box of their own making in which they feel constrained to make a decision or forced to make a decision based on certain constraints which that no one but themselves has created. And then when you actually start questioning about them, it's like, why did you make that decision in that way?
Mhm.
And you start peeling away the layers. You get down to actually, it's almost they made up for themselves their own boundaries to making decisions. It's very, very interesting, I think. So
Yeah.
I would definitely be reading that book. But
Yeah.
remind me of the title again, everybody else. I think sounds fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. The title of the book is called Think: The Road Less Traveled.
And when's it published?
It'll be beginning of May.
May 2025, depending on
Yep,
when this
yep. So
goes.
here in a month and a half.
Yeah, so probably just after this podcast comes out, so
Yeah.
it'll be back then. Fantastic. Cool. All right, let's have a bit of a change of tracks. So there's massive stuff we can delve into with yourself. I'm reading some of the notes you said before, and I'm just going to read out this as a prompt because I ask everyone that comes on to give me some prompts, and I'm just going to read this out because I think it's an interesting one. So this is the prompt that you suggested I should use: is blending self-awareness, EQ, and coaching as a mental model to be an amazing leader. Now that I love the sound of, but I'm not 100% sure I know what you mean. So let's start with that. What do you mean, and go and expand in your own way that you wish to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think as we most leaders, I might even say all, uh, need a coach or someone to support them or guide them. And it may not be a formal coach. It may just be a sounding board. It may be someone just to chat with. What we have found is if as a leader you really want to grow and reach your potential, one of the best things you can do is really look at your what is your level of self-awareness, and there's some great research out by Tasha Eurich is her name, that basically says that 90 some percent of people believe they are self-aware, but actually 5 to 10% really are. And it's really is this piece of, do I understand myself? Okay. Most of us, I think, have a pretty good idea about ourselves. What many times we have blind spots that we don't understand or we don't recognize how ourselves, our actions, our behaviors, how we talk, interact, how that impacts others. And we usually call that kind of the back of the shirt. like I can see what's on the front of the shirt, but not always can I see what's on the back of the shirt. And am I aware of the impact of how I act on others? And am I flexing in a way that creates a win-win? If I'm flexing in a way that makes me feel like I can't be myself, or I'm subduing to others or something, well, that's not a win-win, and that's not, we would say that's not what we're asking you to do. If I'm flexing in a way that allows Steve, if you and I work together, that allows us to communicate more effectively and me to understand you and you to understand me, that's a win-win. And why wouldn't I want to work with someone that is willing to flex some versus saying, well, this is who I am. And if you just can't accept me, like, it's just too bad. Like, we would say, well, that's kind of weak sauce, a really technical term. And, as a leader, what the research says is if I am flexing to my staff and communicating to them in a way that they can hear easier, that I can interact with them, I actually boost their productivity. I boost their engagement pretty significantly. Now, that doesn't mean I don't hold them accountable. That doesn't mean I don't say things like, hey, this needs to get improved. It does mean that, you know what, sometimes, like, I have a staff member that I have to be really direct, like pretty heavy-handed. Now that, like, not rude, but if I say like, well, this might, maybe we could have done this better, he will interpret that as it's optional. I have to be like, no, this has to be better, and here's why. Now I have another staff member that if I, all I have to say really is I'm disappointed, and that will hurt her to her soul. And so I need to flex. Like if I'm too harsh, like that will make her ineffective. And if I'm not harsh enough on the other end, he actually won't be as effective. And so part of that self-awareness is how do I flex and be aware in the moment? And the best of the best leaders are doing that. And I think that is an element that is undervalued and not talked about or practiced as much as we might think.
Yeah. Is this big understanding and I can't remember if use is the right word, but being empathetic
Mhm.
in a way to enhance productivity. I think that's so like my own experience of really working in the corporate world at a level was in medicine, so in the structure of a hospital, but then you had such different characters in the consultants and the way that they treated us as medical students and junior doctors was worlds apart. And without a doubt, we react differently to the way that we as employees, and that when I was an employee, to way that we are talked to. But like exactly what you just said, and I've had exactly the same experience in my company, is I've had staff of total different personality types. And one of the things that we started doing was doing personality tests when people come in. We did that really early.
Yeah.
And things like uh, the Miggs Bryer. Is it Miggs Bryer?
Yeah. Myers-Briggs. Yep.
Myers-Briggs. Oh yeah, yeah. Myers-Briggs. Thank you very much. My dyslexia kicking in again, and looking at people a disc. Oh, I completely lost the
Yep.
word I leave for, and disc as well. And I'm not by no way an expert on that stuff, but it's fascinating to see that when you see people coming through in the interview pipeline and they sit in front of the interview, the way you interview that person, com relating to their personality type
Mhm.
has the same effect as bringing the best out of them or the worst out of them. And before I knew all that stuff, and I just interviewed everybody the same, then you got real different results and feelings from interviews. And now I feel that most interviews I have, I'm actually really impressed by the person because I'm actually taking some time to think about, okay, who is this? Who is this I'm actually sitting in front of before they've even arrived? And that's the same type of thing. So it can start even before we hire somebody being
Mhm.
that way you described, I think can have a huge, huge effect on who we end up getting to work for us. Because
Yeah.
you could, being one person outside, push people away that would otherwise be ideal for you, in your company.
And
Yeah.
this is so important because it really is taking time to say, you have a culture or values that in your organization you want people to align to, right? So that's one piece. We call that heart, right? So that's their heart. Is the heart aligned to what you want? All right. Then there is the knowledge, skills, abilities that you need, whether that's technical abilities, sales, coding, whatever that is. There's some education or experience that you need. We call that briefcase, right? You want them to match the briefcase. And then there's the head, which is the behavioral stuff, and to really think about what do I really need in each of those categories to say, this is my target persona. This is my target person. Now, we have used Myers-Briggs, we've used DISC. We typically use predictive index, which is just another tool. And then it really is interviewing someone to understand how well they align to that head, heart, and briefcase. And it's not necessarily that people are going to be 100% fit in head and briefcase. Like we would tell you, if you don't have a fit in heart, it's a hard no. Like, no, no, no. I can train someone. Now, the behavioral stuff, it is so interesting that if I'm matching behavioral head and briefcase and heart, if I'm matching that, I actually have almost a 90% likelihood that they will fit and stay and perform in that job. If I look at just skills, just knowledge, skills, ability, it's only like 10 or 15%. I mean, it is astonishing the difference. And many times people settle. Well, this, gosh, I've been looking and it's been so long. And so, they're close enough. I would tell you as a leader, the moment those words come out of like slap yourself and say no to that person.
Yeah. I'll hold my hands up. I've been that person, and
And I have
I've
too. Like,
regretted
yeah,
it for months and months later until I
yes,
manned up and got rid of them.
yes. And then you have to make a really yucky decision.
Yeah.
And no one wins in that situation. And I can tell you when we make job offers, we've done that. And then when we sit down and say, okay, here's the job offer, like our conversation is this, and this may sound weird to people, but we walk through, here's your behavioral assessment, and this is why you're a great fit. This is why we want you. Now, the likelihood of getting 100% match is low. Like our experience, we get, 80 to 90% match. And then the second part of that conversation, and here's the pieces that we're really going to need you to flex and stretch that. Like this may be a place where you're not going to love this. We believe you can do it and we want you. Now, before you say yes to the job, we want you to want us as bad as we want you. And we really want you to think about it. Like, if you think, these places where it might be a stretch for you, you might have to grow, you might have to do some things maybe you don't want to do based, but that is the role. And if you're going to say yes, we want you to say yes because you really, really want us as bad as we want you. Like we have that very upfront conversation before anyone signs. And like they have job offer in hand. So like there's no risk. They know here's the pay and here's everything. Now really think about it. Because I think the other thing, if we're 15 people, if one person out of 15 is not performing, that's 8 to 10% impact to the organization. It's very different if if you're 15. I worked for a company that was 150,000 people. One person isn't pulling their weight. It's so hidden you never see it. And so you have to, when you start to think about if I'm 50 or 100 or 200 employees, the most important decision you make is who you hire. The most important decision you make.
Yeah. I mean, just to sort of, loop back to what you guys do as an organization, because this is absolutely fascinating stuff. And, I think we're very much on the same page with so much of this, but I think in many, many ways you are leagues ahead of me, which wouldn't surprise me because I think this is specific to what you do. But what is it that you actually help people do in these sorts of terms? We've talked about leadership, we've talked about recruitment, we've talked about management. Like, is it this kind of stuff that you're helping people do as an organization?
Yeah, and if I kind of step back and I say, okay, what are the categories of like work or things that most people would say, well, what do you do? Well, we would say, well, yep, we do leadership, so leadership development, we do coaching, we do strategic planning, organizational design, process improvement or continuous improvement, depending on your flavor of language, employee engagement would be most of what people know us for or reach out for us.
Interesting. Cool. What else do you want to tell me?
Oh boy, that there's a that wasn't Steve. That wasn't one of the prompts I gave you.
Well, I feel
No,
I often do lead the conversations, but I feel I've led this a lot, and I think that there's sometimes the question I don't know to ask is the one that you need to be answering.
yeah,
So I'm going to put
no,
it to
it's
you as
great.
like, what do you want me to know?
Yeah, I think the only other piece I would say that is in my mind at the moment, if you're a leader of an organization or a leader of a department, or you want to be, the only thing I would say is, all right, what I think it's an opportunity for you to ask yourself, what are you doing every day, every week, every month, every year to grow yourself? Because many times, as leaders of an organization, we're so focused on the organization or the team, or hey, I want to go get that, or I want to get the next contract, and we as leaders are really what's going to hold back the organization. And the organization can really only grow as far as the leader can. So if you're not growing yourself, leveling yourself up, you are at some point going to limit the organization, which is hard because many times we're very focused on the results of the organization and we let ourselves not grow and develop. So that to me is the element of how are you growing yourself? What are you doing to grow yourself? How does that bleed over into your organization, your team, etc.? I think asking yourself that and really holding the mirror up and being honest with yourself, because it's really easy to justify, oh, I'm busy. Oh, I got, and the reality is we all are, and we're all trying to juggle, life and health and business and family and, trying to juggle all of those things. And the reality is you probably, I know I do, you let some things drop and you don't feel good about that. But it really is, how are you continuing to say what is the most important for you and putting your time and attention on that? There's a great book called The One Thing, and it really talks about, right, what's okay, you want to achieve this way out there, but what's the one thing you're going to focus on today? And
Yeah.
what's the next one thing and the next one thing?
I totally agree. And I think like what you're saying now, if it loops back to what you were talking about before as well, with self-awareness and emotional intelligence, and those things come from an understanding of yourself, and then an understanding, okay, I need to actually work on this stuff. I can't continue doing what I've been doing if it's not working. And I think one of the things that I actually signed up for with a marketing coach about 18 months ago, something like that. Well, I went into it thinking it was a marketing coach, and actually what it ended up being was a total journey into me, and why I do what I do, the reasons behind it, the conditioning that I've gone through my entire life, for whatever experiences I've had, and then looking into meditation and breath work and a bunch of stuff that was not on my radar when I started with this coach, but that's what it ended up being. And I was like, wow, this has been one of the most incredible experiences, regardless of the effect it has or hasn't has on my marketing. It has been positive, but the point is, the deeper stuff you're talking about now is like if I go back 18 months to where I am now, like it's been the biggest shift in my mindset about what the hell I'm doing and also my enjoyment of the work I'm doing and
Mhm.
not chasing and going back to right at the beginning about that feeling thing. And it's changed the way I coach people because I'm now not asking them to come up with a goal that is, okay, well, what's your revenue target for this year? I don't care. I don't care if your revenue target is actually half what it was last year. Because if it was half what you had last year, but your stress is also half, and you're suddenly having time to do all those things you want to and love to do in life, and your family is reconnected with you, then my God, what a win. And redefining that all comes from,
Yes.
like you said, the understanding of who you are and then bettering yourself to be able to actually become that person that you wish to be. So
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. Fascinating. Wonderful. What a great interview. Thanks, Scott. Um,
Yes.
I'm going to draw this to a close because of time, but I could go on for hours chatting to you. I'm sure I could. Um, but before I do, there's a couple of things I like to ask everybody that come on the show. Firstly, any top apps, plugins, or technology bits that you like and love and couldn't live without these days?
Ooh, yeah. I would say two. We were talking earlier at the right before we said yes on before we started to record. I've been using Gemini, Google's AI, just so that one in my mind, I'm on there multiple times a day. So that's one.
Cool.
And then we use HubSpot as our CRM and website and kind of our central hub for all things client related. Like in my mind, I cannot at all envision not using that. I think the other one is you talked about um, meditation. I use the Calm app. So if you're familiar with the Calm app, it is so they have recordings and many different things for
Oh, Calm.
guided
Got my phone and
Calm. Yeah,
stuff.
CALM. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, Calm.
So
Yeah,
yeah, so that
yeah.
that
Okay.
would probably be the other one, just from a personal like awareness.
Awesome. Last question. This podcast is called Systemize Your Success, but what does success mean to you?
I think really in my mind, it's two things. One is, at my business partner and I, we're getting up there in age, and we're thinking about retirement. And um, I think one of our successes is what's the impact or legacy that we're leaving? Did we really make an impact on our clients in a positive way? And can we see that? I think that's one. The other is, from a family perspective, I want to be able to leave something positive for our kids, and watch them as I've watched they're now in their 20s, and seeing the people they've become. Uh, in my mind, is I want to see them. What can they really become as they go out there? To me, those are my two definitions of success.
Fantastic. I love that. Good. Scott, if people want to find out more about you, get in touch, learn more about what you do and how you can help, how can they do that?
The three easy ways. LinkedIn, always there. You can go on our website, which is becomemoregp.com, or you can email me directly at becomemoregp.com.
Become more at becomemoregp.com. Fantastic. And if you are looking for Scott on LinkedIn, just spell your surname for me.
Yeah, it's Burgmeyer.
Fantastic. Scott, I've really enjoyed this. I was looking forward to it before I came on, but sometimes you don't know what we're going to chat about. And I thoroughly, I am, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm very grateful for my podcast manager to get you booked in because this was a little bit of a long time coming, getting us actually linked up on the show, but we finally got there and I'm really glad we did. So thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Steve.
See ya.